You are listening to Been There, Done That. We present some of the smartest people connected to the business of coffee. People who've succeeded in the tough grind of hospitality by staying ahead of the rest. So join us as we explore the secrets to their success and help you accelerate your business. This show is brought to you by the Coffee Commune, where the coffee community comes to collaborate. Enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Phil DeBella, and you're listening to another episode of Been There and Done That, where we bring great people from great backgrounds that have been there and done that to share their expertise. Today, we're going to be talking all about compliance and training. So target audience, obviously, is, as usual, business owners, but especially cafes and restaurants and people with hospitality venues. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you aren't aware of. And one of the reasons that we run the Been There and Done That podcast is to bring real people from great experience to talk about different issues and things that are happening in the industry. And today we're going to be talking with a veteran of the industry, and I'll introduce him in a minute, but we're going to be talking about compliance for cafes in an ever-changing environment, but not only the compliance side, but what you can and should be doing in the training area to make sure that you're ticking all those regulatory requirements that are happening constantly. So let me introduce to you one of Brisbane's, let's say, stalwarts. He's been in the industry for a long time, Mr. Brendan Power from Clear to Work. Brendan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Phil.
Mate, I've known you obviously for a long time. Seasoned entrepreneur, hospitality veteran. You virtually grew up in a pub. I'm not going to take the limelight away. I'm going to tell you to give us a bit of your origin story and background. We'll start with that, and then we'll move on to the ever-changing complex of compliance that seems to keep getting pushed onto the hospitality industry. But first, give the listeners a bit of a snapshot of your great history in hospitality.
Sure, Phil. So I'm third generation publican. My grandfather owned pubs here in Queensland. Obviously, my father owned many pubs in Queensland, Northern Territory. To that extent, I was actually spent the first 2 years of my life living above a pub, the Royal Nunda at Nunda. A lot of people would know that pub.
I went to primary school around the corner.
That's right, you did too. So I could almost say veteran is probably right, because I guess technically I've been in the industry for about 58 years, if you call my first 2 years of life hospitality. Yeah, I've owned my own pubs up in Toowoomba. I am technically trained as well, got a degree in business, got an MBA. Yeah, so I sold out of my pubs about 16, 17 years ago and got into training, and specifically hospitality training. And I've been doing that ever since under the banner of Clear to Work. So we specialise in things like responsible service of alcohol, responsible gaming, food safety, and just recently we've got into child protection training, which is a big one now in childcare. But even these days, if you want to be a footy coach, you've got to do some courses so you understand child protection.
Yeah, what I love about it is obviously you've come from the coalface, you've come from the industry, you've seen the changes, and that's going to be my next question is what are the major changes over the decades? But you can see why we brought somebody like Brendan onto the show. Comes from great pedigree, very famous family in hospitality in Australia and let alone Brisbane, Queensland. But has been at the coalface and is now specialising in compliance and training for compliance so that you, the listeners, can make sure that you're ticking all the boxes. So an episode to listen to. We'll try and break it down as simple as possible. But let's start with through the decades, Brendan. I started in the hospitality. I'm 50. I started in hospitality at 14, washing dishes for my brother's pizza shop, Naples Pizza.
I know it.
Yep, another great little business. I started washing dishes. Totally different operating environment at 14, which was 36 years ago. Than what it is today at 50. Talk us through your experience. This is about you and bringing to the table your experience. Just maybe a snapshot through the decades of how hospitality has changed in terms of the compliance requirements and what's expected of an owner when it comes to running their business.
Well, certainly it's changed a lot, as you would know. I give an example of that when I was working in my father's bars, that the bartender would have a cigarette lit at the end of the bar.
Very true.
And they serve a customer, wander down the end of the bar and have a cigarette.
Yeah.
So that's one of my fondest memories, and the nicotine on the ceiling of the pubs. And it was just, there was literally no compliance. The only compliance that we did have probably was that the local chemical salesman would come in and put a poster up in the bathroom and tell you how to wash your hands. But that went on through the early 80s into the 90s. And probably almost into the 2000s when you come up to basically the Food Act in Queensland in 2006, where things started to get a bit more strict. And a little bit before that, you've got the food standards Australia and New Zealand. So that happened a little time before that. So things probably in the early 2000s, we started to become a little bit more compliant.
So that was a turnkey point, the 2000s.
The 2000s were definitely. Yeah. And that's when training started to become big, responsible service of alcohol, food safety training. They were the two big ones that came about. Yeah. Unfortunately, back then they were face-to-face. So if you're a regional cafe or pub or club or restaurant, you had to travel to a major city to do the course.
Yeah, yeah.
These days, thank God, it's all done online.
Yeah.
So everyone's got access to training. There's no excuses not to be able to train your staff or your team.
And there's no excuse from a compliant. And we'll go through that, obviously. So, yeah, look, I got into hospitality in the 80s, late 80s, obviously well into the 90s. And I would say, yeah, the big change came in the 2000s and rightly so for a lot of things.
Correct.
There was horrendous, some of the stuff I used to see, especially being a kitchen hand and dishwasher, working in different venues and people going to the bathroom, not washing their hands and all that sort of stuff, and wiping their hands all over their aprons and all this sort of stuff. But there is a lot of good change that has come.
Yeah, and also especially considering that allergens became a big issue in the 2000s as well.
Yeah.
And that's only getting more and more strict, the compliance around allergens. So, yeah, it was about time things changed.
Yeah. All right. So let's unpack, right? So we get to the 2000s. We've got a lot more rules and regulations coming in. Was it industry-led at that time? Would you say that it was industry-led, the changes were through the industry, or was it consumer-led, or was it government? Because they're the three different levels. You've got the consumer, you've got the industry, and you've got the government. Where did you actually see the change? Who was calling for the compliance?
I think alcohol-wise, it was definitely the publicans.
Yes.
They drove that. My father actually helped write the first RSA course.
Great. So it was industry expertise.
Industry expertise. But I also think that it was consumer-led as well to a certain extent, because things like allergens and food safety became such a big issue.
Yeah.
And there was also a big not uprising, but there was certainly a growth in restaurants, cafes.
Yeah, there was a big spurt in the 2000s.
Correct. So I think that also spurred it on. And people were becoming a lot more professional. So they needed that compliance, they needed that training.
Yeah. And we also saw, the step change too, I remember clearly in the 2000s, actually 2000, because I started my own company in 2002, but in 2000 specifically, we saw a lot of professionals opening and investing in cafes and restaurants.
Entering the market.
Yeah.
And they were a little bit more savvy than your typical
second generation European operator, right?
I didn't want to go there.
Yeah, that's right. No, we call it as it is on the show.
Yeah, that's right. Well, didn't you have the cafe in New Farm?
Yeah, well, we had View Lounge.
That's
we opened that in 2004.
Yeah.
But prior to that, obviously, I never forget Cosmopolitan Coffee, which was my father-in-law's business.
Yep.
The bags of cash, and it was 90% cash. And Monday mornings, they'd be dumping the cash on the table and counting it all out, and then doing the banking and the bookkeeping accordingly.
Yep.
But it was 90% cash. And back then, to give you an idea, Cosmopolitan Cafe was one of the busiest. It was turning over $70K a week.
Wow. Back then.
In the 90s. You're talking $1.40 a coffee.
Yeah.
So $70K a week, $1.40 coffees, $6 for a pizza. You can imagine the volume of traffic that was going through there.
Yeah.
And the compliance that needed to come with that volume of food and turnover and health and safety and practices and the rest of it.
I think as prices went up in cafes and restaurants as well, I think the consumer demanded a lot more.
Yeah.
So I think it was very much, to a certain extent, consumer-led, but also industry-led as well.
Yeah, great. Let's fast forward now. Let's talk through the basics. So you can see, just for the listeners, I want to give them a bit of a snapshot of, because both of us have been in this for a long time, you longer than me, but for the consumers to start to get an understanding, because the one thing that I want you to understand from what we've just spoken about too is every time you add a level of complexity, you add a level of cost.
Correct.
And I'm going to put that right out there then. Yep. So people say, why were things cheaper back then? Well, for many reasons, right? Obviously, the value of the dollar was less and all the rest of it. But also, the level of compliance was a lot easier. Now, I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but every time you add a level of compliance, you add a level of cost. So just keep that in the back of your mind as a listener. Fast forward to today, which we'll get to, the level of compliance required for a hospitality venue is crazy, right? In terms of every box they have to tick and all the rest of it. And therefore, that adds a cost element that people need to be aware, which then goes on to the price of the product. So we'll park that one and we'll go back. Talk us through. You're opening a cafe now. Or a hospitality venue now.
Yep.
What are the prerequisite, compliances that you need to have?
Okay. Well, if you're opening up a cafe or restaurant, the first thing you need is a food license. That's the basic. But you'd be surprised how many cafes, et cetera, restaurants try to open without a food license.
Yep.
they basically can come in and fine you straight away. The council can come in and fine you, and or they can shut you down.
Yep. So food license number one.
Numero uno. I'd probably then go look at your systems, monitoring systems within the establishment as you're setting up, like temperature controls.
Temperature controls for your fridges.
And that's in the last probably 6 years, that's become hot.
Yep. And there's a regulation behind that. They have to keep logbooks and all the rest of it.
Correct. Well, these days it's all done automatically.
Yeah.
So you put a probe in your fridge and your freezers, and it goes to your mobile phone.
Yeah.
Then it goes to your computer. And so you can, if an inspector comes in, you can show them your mobile phone and go, there you go, my temperatures are fine.
Again, scary for the amount of people that don't have that. And if you're listening to this and that's you, you know, you're going to have, there's going to be links on here. You need to be contacting Brendan at Clear to Work to get this stuff sorted. So there is a solution to all this. So we're going to talk compliance, but we've brought Brendan on because he has the solutions for you. So Brendan Power and his team at Clear to Work can help you with all of this. So if you're listening to this and going, geez, I don't have that, I don't have this, I don't have that, ignorance is not an excuse. Get on the phone, get on the email. The details will be attached to this and contact the guy. So, you know, obviously you've got your food license, you've got all your temperature controls. What about the handling of food, which is the one a lot of people don't know now? Yep.
Food handling. So I would be recommending that you do a minimum for your staff introduction to food handling, which is training.
Yep. And that's mandatory for everyone, isn't it?
This is non-accredited, but it's just a start. It's to get them kicked off, and it's very inexpensive. Then I would probably get them to upgrade to Food Safety Level 1, which is the 005. That gives you a fully compliant unit of competency, and that gives awareness. That's what we call it. If you've got a food license, you need a Food Safety Supervisor, at least one person there who's on duty.
Yes.
That's the 006. And that's basically mandatory as well. So you need at least one Food Safety Supervisor, whether it be the manager or the person who's there the most.
Or the chef.
The chef.
Or the cook.
Yeah, the cook, 9 times out of 10, they normally do. But if they don't, I'd be strongly suggesting they can get it.
So that's another one for the listeners to be checking on. Does your chef, does your cook, does your cafe manager have the
Food Safety Supervisor?
Yeah.
And that ranges in price from different providers. I think we're about $89.
Yeah, it's a low cost, right?
A low cost.
And how long does accreditation last for?
For the food, I think it's 1 to 3 years. I'm not too sure because we operate nationally. I just don't off the top of my head.
And there is different rules for different states.
Oh God, unfortunately, yes, that is a nightmare. So yeah, it's inexpensive. They can do it in their own time. They can do it in their pajamas if they want. They don't have to travel.
It's a tax deduction as well.
It is. Yeah, write it off. Food Level 1, Food Safety Supervisor. Their temperature controls is huge. They're the things I'd be looking at straight away.
And they're the food ones, right?
Correct. But then you want to get into things like customer service, dealing with angry customers.
That's a big one, right?
Well, when you say to someone, that's probably one of our fastest growing courses. When you say to someone, it's going to be $6.80 for a coffee, and there's 30 people and they're waiting for half an hour, people get aggro. It's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. So those sort of basic micro-credential courses can really help the business.
Yeah. And to me, it's all knowledge-based. It's all it's resource. You want to upskill your teams. I mean, I've been a big fan of always empowering my team.
Yeah.
I give them the outcome and the vision, and then I give them the parameters. And the one thing I always say to them, tell me the skills, the tools, the resources you need to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, I want my team coming back to me saying, hey, I want to know how to give better customer service. I want to know how to serve angry customers. I want to know how to handle food better.
Correct.
These are things that shouldn't just be a compliance issue. This should be actually the will and determination of a worker.
It makes your business better.
Yeah.
That's what it does. So you give them outcomes, and what that outcome gives them is confidence.
Yeah.
And there's nothing better than having someone behind a counter. You can sense their confidence in what they're doing.
You got to remember too, they take these credentials with them.
Oh,
so
exactly.
You know, I always say, and people that listen to this, but as a venue, I can't afford all these courses for 10 different people. Agree. But how about maybe subsidizing or putting it onto the employee to say, today you're working with me, tomorrow you're working with somebody else. You take these credentials with you.
Correct.
People pay to go to university. People pay to do TAFE courses. Why don't individuals say, I want to be a hospitality professional, and in that, I'm going to go and get my food handling safety certificate. I'm going to get my RSA, which is responsible service of alcohol. I'm going to go get my customer service certificate. I'm going to go get conflict resolution, accreditation. If I turn up to the next interview and I've got 5 or 6 micro credentials, I'm going to be a lot more employable than somebody who's got none, right?
Well, we call them the resume builders.
There you go.
So you can actually, you're right. You're one step ahead of the next person who's going for that job.
But any other compliance sort of stuff around food?
They're probably the major ones. There's another course we do, which is stock control, which is quite good.
Very important as we speak. People leveling cash flow levels and
making
sure you're not overstocked, understocked.
Yeah, but also just monitoring where your stock is. Like you could have piece of chicken out the back there, unless you've got good stock control, you don't know how long that's been there for.
Yeah, well, we've been there. I've worked in venues and I've walked into venues where their freezers are that big and they don't know what's at the bottom of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it'll get served.
Yeah.
And you don't know how long it's been there for.
Yep. Or worse, it sits there forever and it goes off and there's thousands of dollars that go in the bin, right?
Correct.
Now, let's talk over to beverages.
Yep.
So what sort of of course, obviously you got your responsible service of alcohol.
That's the number one.
And it's a must, right? You cannot
You
touch
can't serve alcohol without a responsible
Are you
service.
listening to this? Because I still have people that I know that have got people serving alcohol with no certification. You need anyone that touches alcohol has to have an RSA compliance.
It's anyone who serves a customer.
Okay. Anyone that serves a customer has to have RSA.
Yep.
Even if it's a non-licensed venue?
Even if it's a non-licensed venue.
Okay.
Yep. If you're serving any alcohol, you've got to have an RSA.
And what's the cost of that?
$23.90. It is nothing.
There you go, $23.90 to get an RSA, and that means if you're serving people's BYO alcohol, or it doesn't matter if you're non-licensed, but you're still serving alcohol on behalf, or if you're at a function, you need to have your RSA, and that is $23.90. Don't risk the fine. What's the fine? It's something ridiculous. $12,500.
Yes,
and I think $37,500 for the venue. Don't quote me on this. It used to be that, so it'll probably be more now.
Again, each state is different, but it's significant.
Yeah, and it's in the thousands.
Yeah,
anyway.
it's in the thousands, and the customer also gets a fine.
Yeah, well, there you go. So that's something not to muck around. What other
RMLV?
What's that one?
Responsible manager of a licensed venue.
Okay,
this is a tricky
Talk us
one.
through that one.
Okay, so if you're the owner of venue and the licensee, which means it's licensed, and you're there on the premises for a majority of the time, you don't need an RMLV.
Okay.
But if you're not there as the owner of the premises, you need someone responsible. That's why they call it responsible manager of a licensed venue. You need someone who will basically take your place, who isn't the licensee.
So if you're an investor in a licensed venue, you need to have somebody.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's probably something I didn't know anything about that. So you go. And I've been in the industry for 40 years, well, 36 years. I mean,
I won't say it's a trap, but people just, they don't know it exists.
Look, it makes sense. Let's be honest. I've got no ideology issues with that. That makes sense, right?
Correct.
And which puts me to the next question, and something that our producer will make sure he does is put the links up so that people can go.
Yep.
If they go to your website, does it have a list of all the stuff that they need to have? Okay. And what is the website?
Clear to Work, www.cleartowork.com.au.
So cleartowork.com.au. And we'll make sure that link goes up, because a lot of people listening to this go, well, hang on, what about this one and what's that? I missed it. Jump on the website, have a look at all the different compliance, make the inquiry. Guys, you've got to understand, and I say this anytime we talk about any regulative stuff on the Been There, Done That podcast, I always say that ignorance is not an excuse. There is no such thing. The government officials, whether it's local, state or federal, because it's all different, they come and visit and check your compliance. If it local is your food handling and all that sort of stuff. State is normally your liquor license.
Correct.
Federal is all your other stuff, the ATOs and superannuation. They will not take ignorance as an excuse. So you need to put the onus on yourself to be compliant. And that's one of the reasons why the Commune exists. That is one of the reasons we run this podcast, Been There, Done That. So we bring people like Brendan onto the show to say, hey, these are the things that you need to be aware when it comes to operating a hospitality venue. Tell us some of the shocking stories that have happened out there. I mean, you would have seen many over the years. You don't have to mention brands and names, but some of the people that have actually not been compliant and what's happened to them.
Look, compliance usually falls down in the rush. That's probably the critical thing. Yeah, and I've heard horror stories about people saying, oh, are there nuts in it? Is there gluten? Is there milk? I'll order a piece of cheesecake. Are these things in there? The poor person behind the bar doesn't know how to respond because they haven't been trained. And people can die.
Yeah.
There's no...
You're messing with people's lives.
You're messing with people's lives. It's not as though you're going to get a negative tick on Google. Yeah. It's like you can lose your license, fined heavily.
Jail time.
And this is only because you're just not compliant. You haven't spent $200 or $300. Yeah. So, yeah, look, I could mention plenty of horror stories around the RSAs, obviously.
And some of them are deserved, right?
Very much
I remember
deserved.
in the years people walking up to a bar and people just keep serving them, and they should be sending them home. So again, it's one of those things that a lot of the compliances have been brought in for good reason.
Correct.
Doesn't mean that they're always administered or executed, right? But the intention is always right.
Exactly.
To put the responsibility, not just, and that's why I say that to me, the perfect is that the responsibility is on the venue, but it's also the responsibility is on the consumer to understand. So I'm actually a big fan of that. The consumer gets fined and the operator gets fined.
So, and you might have noticed recently, you go to a restaurant or go to a cafe and they ask you these days, do you have any food allergens?
Yes.
I mean, you sit down at a restaurant, first thing they ask you,
Yes.
do you have any food allergens? Do you have any food allergens? Because you've got to remind the customer as well, because sometimes they're in a nice environment or a changed environment, they've had a glass of wine or a beer or something, and they just forget to say anything.
Yeah.
So you've got
It's a
to
good
ask. You've got to ask the question.
Yeah, it's a good point. So talk to us through all sorts of stuff that's coming out around food handling. And the latest one they're talking about is the new seafood standards, or these origin and labelling and all the rest of it. You guys also deal with that stuff?
Yeah, we will be. I think that comes out on the 1st of July.
I believe so. 1st of July 2026.
Yep.
There's new country origin labelling rules and standards, especially around seafood.
Correct.
Because there's been a lot of imported seafood and all the rest of it.
So you've just got to be honest. So if someone asks you where the salmon's from, you got to say it's from it's from South Australia, or it's from Thailand, or it's from wherever. You've just got to be honest. But this is where training comes in. You as a staff member need to know what to ask the chef. Or is there a run sheet? Is there a daily menu sheet? Is there a blackboard that you put up saying, our whiting today is from Thailand or Malaysia? I mean, there are simple ways of providing the right information to the customer.
Yeah, transparency. Right?
Correct. Yeah. Those sort of things aren't that hard. People thought that legislation was going to come in just for takeaway, but it's obviously hit restaurants and cafes. Yeah. So they're just going to have to be more fluid in how they respond to customers if they ask the question, and or be more proactive and say, oh, by the way, our fish is from
such and such. Yeah.
Correct.
And we're already seeing it. I mean, the good operators. I shop down at New Farm Seafood.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
The guys down there are great.
Yep.
You know, they label everything, where it's from. They tell you if it's wild caught or line
of course.
caught. To me, that's a standard that should be there, right?
Yep.
The customer information. And good operators will know that.
Yep.
You know, it's no different with our coffee. People will say, you know, what's in this blend? Well, there's coffee from Brazil, there's coffee from Colombia, there's coffee from Vietnam, whatever it is.
Of course.
If, you know, masters of their craft, no matter what they're doing, will know what's going on with their product and produce. And the customer has every right to know, right?
Correct. Seafood's one of those things that changes regularly.
Yeah.
I can't get bassa or I can't get tuna, so I'm going to replace it with something else. So that's where the communication between whoever's ordering the food, which is usually the kitchen, and the frontline staff, that needs to be great.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I love about the courses, and I want to talk a bit about that now, the accredited versus non-accredited, and the benefits of the micro courses, and we'll explore that in a minute, is that you've got opportunities now for your team to be better educated, to educate the customer.
That's right.
The customer is more educated than they've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
I notice, because we do a lot of work, obviously, in the cafe space with 1,300 cafes that are members of the Commune, nearly 1,900 members across the whole community, which is massive, and the biggest group in Australia that's non-government funded. And we're very proud of that here at the Coffee Commune, of course. It gives us a lot of data. Mm-hmm. It gives us a lot of access to people, and it also gives us a lot of power when it comes to working with local, state, and federal governments. But one of the things that people need to be aware is that the consumer is becoming more and more aware, and we lead the charge. We've educated people that in cafes, 45 to 50% is now wages. It used to be 30 to 35%.
Yeah, remember the good old days?
Yep, 30 to 35% is now 45 to 50%. Yep. So that when you're seeing that $6 or $7 cup of coffee, half of that has gone to wages. The $30 bacon and eggs, half of that is wages. And the more that the customer is aware, the more informed decision they can make. However, in the spirit of what we're talking about today, the more educated the customer, the more educated the server.
Has to be.
And now there is no excuse, because you've got organizations like yourself that offer courses. So let's talk about accredited versus non-accredited. Can you clear this up for us?
Certainly. So where most of our accredited courses come from is the Cert 3, Certificate 3 in Hospitality.
Yes.
Right. So fully accredited through ASQA, Australia Skills Quality Authority, recognised nationally.
Okay.
What we do is we write micro-credential courses so they can be a little bit less expensive. They're based on the unit of competency, but they might not have the stringent assessment of a unit of competency, which we have to adhere to by the rules and regulations of ASQA. So like our introduction to food safety, which is almost equivalent to the food safety level 1. It's got all the same components. It's all about awareness. It just doesn't have the stringent assessment criteria.
If I hired somebody that had done that course, they'd be just as good as somebody that had hired the other.
I would like to think so, but they just don't have that recognised course behind them. Okay. And for an extra, I think it's $10 or $15, I'd do the accredited course.
Do the accredited.
Yeah. So,
and that's the thing for people to know, because that breaks the confusion. So you would take accredited all the time?
I think for your resume, if you're a young person, say 18 to 24, which is our target market,
Yes.
I'd always go the accredited course.
And also,
and you can balance it with some other do the accredited, then balance it with a micro-credential customer service, dealing with abusive customers, blah, 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 blah.
Just boost your
correct.
Boost your, what I call boost your library, right?
Exactly.
But of course, the big one is that you're targeting 18 to 24-year-olds. Guys, do the courses, get skilled up.
Yeah.
And then Australian hospitality is recognised all over the world. So the ability to travel, and I know through the barista world, right? Australian baristas will get a job ahead of any other barista anywhere in the world, and New Zealand's probably second. There you go. Because the New Zealand baristas are really have been trained really well.
Yes.
So you can go around the world and you can get a job. And I've had business in New York, and I can tell you the Aussie baristas are getting snatched up left, right, and centre. Anyway, I had business in Thailand. The Aussie baristas get snatched up. I had business in China. I've got business in India still. Any Australian barista gets snapped up straight away because they know that the level of accreditation and the work and how we put them through the training is recognised globally. So I'm a big advocate for people doing accredited courses and micro-credential courses.
Yeah, and also the problem with some micro-credential courses is that you could get some companies who are offering them who don't have the backup of doing accredited courses. Yeah. So they're just basically making shit up, unfortunately.
And the other thing is time.
Time.
Right. Yep. And the days of taking, we can't afford to pay our workers half a day to go sit in a workshop.
Yeah. So an accredited course usually takes between 3 and 6 hours to do, not including the assessment, while a micro-credential course, and the reason for that is actually gets marked by an assessor.
Yeah.
So you've actually got a real live person who marks an accredited course. With a non-accredited course or a micro-credential course, you can have it done in an hour and still get the same awareness, same knowledge, to a certain extent, some of the same outcomes, but it's just marked by the computer.
Okay. So tell us the compliance audit. If you walked into a cafe today, what are the things you would look for?
I'd look for the certificate, food safety certificate on the wall.
Yeah.
I went to a coffee shop this morning, and because I knew I was having my having a chat with you today, I scoured the place looking for their certificate. Yeah. Nothing.
So put your certificates on display.
Correct, yeah. I think that shows that you're trying to be compliant.
Yeah. And I notice a lot of people use it now in their social media. They'll actually put they've got a 4-star or they've got a 5-star. Talk us through that, because people go, why isn't it 5-star? Well,
so there's no stars, there's no star rating with accredited courses.
With the accredited stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So you can just make up your own stars if you want, but I mean, there's all sorts of different organisations who do their own stars. But just having the food safety certificate level 2 up, which is supervisor, I think it says something about your business.
Yeah. It's no different to putting your, people, like in my office, I've got my degrees and I've got my
That's what me too.
I've got my professorships, stuff like that, right? It really is. It adds to that brand.
Correct.
So therefore, be proud for the listeners. You got those certificates, you got those accreditations, put them up, be proud of them.
Yep.
It boosts to the brand of your cafe or your venue.
Correct.
To show that, hey, not only are we compliant, but we actually take serving you very seriously.
And also, when the inspectors do come in, and they will come in one day, they just look around and go, yep, food safety supervisor. Yeah. Right. So one thing's ticked off already. It shouldn't, all your compliance certificates shouldn't be in a manila folder in the bottom of the manager's drawer. Yeah. They should be easily accessible.
Yeah. And I say where your awareness goes, your energy flows, right?
Correct.
So if people are really putting that stuff up and very proud of their achievements and accreditations, then that tells me that there's a venue that's proud of what it's doing.
Agreed.
So tell us, final thoughts, some quick wins for cafes. Somebody's listening here and going, shit, I don't know where to start. Obviously, get in touch with you guys.
Yep.
Do you offer audits on what people are doing? How do you go about it?
So one thing we do offer is we offer a management platform.
Yes.
So let's say you've got 10 or 12 staff and you want to manage what they're doing, when they're doing it. Steve, I've told you to go and do your food safety level 1. You can actually track via one of our systems where they're at in the trail. So that's become a large part of our business.
So we could hand that whole responsibility over to you guys?
It's still run by the venue.
Yes.
We just provide the platform.
Okay. So they get in touch with you, you provide the platform, and then we can monitor and say, hey, I've got 30-odd staff. This is where they're at. This is what they've completed. This is what they haven't completed. And obviously you guys are there to help support and make sure that we're compliant. And for the listeners listening to this, the why, well, firstly, the compliance is only one point. But 2, turn that compliance into your marketing story.
Yeah.
And I say that marketing is the art of telling a story so compelling that people choose you. It's the emotional engagement. Use your resource bag, use your accreditations, use your micro credentials, use the skill of your team to actually tell a story that gets customers to engage with your venue over your competitors.
We also find that cafes, restaurants, clubs, pubs who do train their staff, those staff become quite loyal. They stay for the business for a lot longer, and we know what it's like to train staff.
Yeah.
So if you can get them to stay for an extra 6 months or 12 months because you've helped them out with their accreditations, et cetera, you're winning all the way.
Especially at the moment.
Yep.
I say when unemployment's at 3 or 4%, it's currently, I think, 4 or 4.5%.
Yep.
It's all about the employee.
Correct.
You know, to me, the equilibrium's around 6 to 7%. That means the employee wins and the employer wins.
Exactly.
But while the unemployment's at 3 to 5%, the employee, it's a retention and attraction strategy. So I agree. If you're going to upskill your workers and you're going to show them that you care about them and that they belong to a venue that really cares, you're more than likely to keep them over those venues that don't.
Of course.
So any closing thoughts? Like I said, you've been in this industry for a long time. Where do you think the industry is going?
I think, unfortunately, it's probably going to become more and more compliant because it's easy to monitor compliance for the venue and also for the inspectors.
Yeah.
So I think it's just going to become, I won't call it red tape, but there's just going to be a few more hurdles put in place, but it's only for the benefit of the consumer and for the benefit of the venue as well.
Yep.
So,
and AI is obviously there. How do you see AI playing into this? Because to me, I see it as a tool that can help. I see it as a resource that can actually help venues.
as long as people don't become lazy and rely on AI.
Yeah.
Because AI is not perfect.
Correct.
So that's my only caveat with that. I agree. We use AI all the time, but we use it as a checking measure, not as a learning measure.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's a research and analytics. It's but the forward-facing stuff is still humans.
Correct.
You know, especially in hospitality.
Well, it's going to be a long time before I get served by a robot.
Yeah. Well, and like we've seen in the coffee space, there's robots have been out for years, but people don't want it. Why are they going to pay $5.50 or $6.50 for a coffee if they're not getting the human interaction?
They want the theatre.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they do. So there's going to be obviously a lot of opportunities as we talk about. Any person there that's sitting there and saying, how can I stand out from the crowd? How can I be better than my competitors? Training is a big one. You know, upskill your team, upskill your staff, get the customer service skills into them, get the basic requirements of food handling, RSA licenses, all the rest of it. So tick the basics to start with, and then also look into all those micro credentials that help upskill your workers in customer service, in delivering above and beyond on customer expectation. Conflict management is a great one. Stock handling. These are all really great. Cash management, cash flow management. These are all great micro credential courses that will help boost the operations of your business.
Yeah.
Brendan, it's been a pleasure. Congratulations.
It's been great.
On
really
a great,
good to see you.
On a great career. Good to see you. And obviously, congratulations on the work that you're doing, because now you're using your experience to help the next generation.
That's been a great advantage.
Yeah. Brendan, till next time. And for those listening, Clear to Work, we'll have the details on there. Have a look, see what courses are available. You saw and you heard it first. They're not expensive. They're not what they used to be. It's not thousands of dollars. In a lot of cases, not even hundreds of dollars. Right? Have a look at what your team can do. Have a look at why you want them to do it. And if in doubt, get in touch with Brendan and his team at Clear to Work, and these guys will help you navigate through. Brendan, thanks again.
Pleasure, mate.
Till next time, you've been listening to Phil DeBella, and this has Been There, Done That, where we bring people with real-life experience to help solve complex problems to help you be better tomorrow than what you are today. That's a wrap for today. Keep listening for more episodes of Been There and Done That. The Coffee Commune is here to help accelerate your potential. We want you to be better tomorrow than today. Until next time, you've been listening to Phil DeBella. I'm the founder and managing director of the Coffee Commune, a place where the coffee community comes to collaborate.